You know that feeling when you're watching a movie and you're like, man, the narrative is so awesome. The acting is so incredible. The dialogue, the editing, the pacing, the score, all of it. I'm just fully, the film has me by the balls, by the cojones. It's tickling them. It's tugging on them, working the shaft, all that good stuff. Like, man, I'm really dreading the fact that this film has to meet its eventual ending. I don't want this film to end. Like, that feeling, totally not the feeling I had for this movie. Hey, Google.
There is a reminder.
Look at this.
All those years in the big city, we finally got out. We're living the dream.
Maybe it is a dream.
Then everything just blew up. Big flash, like a pink light. Or actually, I don't even know what color it was. It wasn't like any color I'd ever seen before.
After a meteorite lands in the front yard of their farm, Nathan Gardner, played by Nicolas Cage, oh boy, Nicolas Cage, baby, and his family find themselves battling a mutant extraterrestrial organism as it infects their minds and bodies and transforming their quiet, rural life into a technicolor nightmare. Woo! Sounds cool, right? Well, let's start with the critic consensus for this, currently holding 95% by critics, followed by an 85% from audiences. So what the serious F, dude? What the French toast, man? I did my due diligence watching this film. Yeah, definitely did my time. I served my time. And then I did my due diligence checking out what the pulse in terms of what the reviewers thought about this film. And to my shock, it seems like all these horror nerds, these closet psychopathic murderers, because that's kind of in the back of my head. I'm thinking, dude, if you really like are into horror, you're kind of a little bit of a freak. Everyone is loving this film, and I cannot understand it. Now, I will fully let you know I have a bias against horror films, largely because I find them unimaginative, frustratingly stupid with regards to how most characters act in these films, because as a black man of color, dude, like at the first sign of trouble, I'm like, yo, let's dip out. Like we can survey the situation from like 40 miles away, like figure it out amongst ourselves then, and then return to the scene of the murder if that ever has to happen, which in my personal case, it would never have to happen. I have no business being around anything going down that's crazy. But white people seem to be like, hey, let's investigate. And ironically, Jim, if you're watching this, I'm very curious as a detective and a white man yourself, off duty. Have you ever stuck around just to see what's going down if some freaky ass shizzle was happening in your neighborhood? Or did you just be like, or were you just like, I'm gonna head out. I will surveil this from the outside and then maybe perhaps slowly work my way inside with some backup or some comfortable measure of assurance that you're not going to be next in line to get your D chopped off. All right. So that aside, guys, this film I found to be very silly. And I think that's pretty obvious from the fact that Nicolas Cage is in this. It's a very slippery, messy narrative. I mean, if this film were the equivalent of a floor in a hallway, it would be so slippery you could toss a hot dog down that hallway. It would slide down at light speed right into director Stanley Richards' ass, where it belongs. Because I failed to mention, Stanley Richards is the director of this film, most famous for making that weird film, The Island of Dr. Moreau, which he was unceremoniously removed from production of. I think he also has a writing credit for it. And surprisingly, too, get this, guys, Steve Annis is the director of photography for this. So I'm confused because I really loved I Am Mother, which he was DP for, director of photography for. And I thought what he did with this low-budget science fiction film that was picked up by Netflix after the production was nothing short of fantastic and imaginative and beautiful and brilliant. So the fact that I haven't mentioned yet, I felt very frustrated by the cinematography. And now I got some clues about this from the trailer, but I was more focused on the CGI elements of the cinematography. But before we get into the cons and the messy, dirty, gritty about what I thought and what I felt watching this film, let's start off with some general expectations, my impressions. You know, I didn't know what to expect watching this. I knew Nick Cage was in it. I knew it was going to be balls off the wall crazy. But that's basically it. So I went into it basically blind. I did find that the setup for the film was really good. I like seeing the characters, you know, have their story built out throughout the film. But unfortunately, you know, it has a very slow burn throughout this movie, and it eventually does just fizzle out. And that's so disappointing. You know, I mean, not as disappointing as a 1 Minute Man Minute Maid during Sexual Congress, but, you know, pretty close to it. Yeah, the setup was good, but again, it fizzled out. And I thought it was interesting because a lot of people are comparing this film to Annihilation, which on my initial first viewing, I found to be, despite having fantastic qualities on every axiom you could possibly imagine, acting, cinematography, sound editing, everything, like all fantastic. But I felt like that film kind of like fell short of like what my expectations were. Despite that, now, you know, in comparison, I feel like Annihilation, man, like hats off to you, bro. Like the director for that film, Alex Garland, you got it, bro. Like you really knew how to build that tension, that atmosphere, despite being a kind of ambiguous message, which is cool. You know, it worked. Yeah, let's start off with the pros. Nicolas Cage in this movie, he does his thing. He is Nicolas Cage through and through. So I really felt like that really captivated me throughout most of the film. I wanted to see him from the onset as soon as this film started. He did carry the film through. This film does have a lot of hilarious comedic moments, and not because the movie is so bad that it's good in a funny way, but because the actual screenplay and the dialogue and the comedy that they did set up actually was executed well and made me laugh. So cool. But that's it, because I've got a laundry list of cons to talk about. I did mention how I hate H.P. Lovecraft's name being dropped by marketing. It is a low-budget film. It does feel like a low-budget film. Now, this is tying back into what the issue I had with the cinematography, the cinematographer, Steve Ennis. You know, you have these gore shots. You know, you really want to see the character, the villain or the monster eventually, right? At some point. And a lot of the time you have these, what seems to be really cool practical effects for this creepy alien figures. But they're so like, so shot, so close up in frame. You know, it begs the question, like, did they just go to like Food for Less and grab a bunch of like meat and just like tossed it in a pile and then did a close up on that because they couldn't build a practical effect and show us it moving in motion? I mean, that's what it felt like, because this happens like so frequently throughout the film. And it's like close up of these like money shots. And I'm like, all right, dude, like, it's obvious to me, like, you're on a budget. And I get it, like, cool. If it would be excusable if there were not any other problems. Yeah, I think I've said as much as I can about this film. This is an untidy mess of a film that does more to bore you out of your mind intermittently more than it does to scare you or invoke a sense of atmosphere and tension. And in my personal opinion, it does not live up to the expectations set forth in the trailers. So my score for Color Out of Space, starring Nicolas Cage, is going to get a 2 out of 5 bags of popcorn. It's a certified stinker. Oh, God. It stinks, as famous critic Jay Sherman from the classic comedy cartoon from the 90s, The Critic, says. It stinks. Yeah. So guys, listen, if you've got a date, I would not recommend seeing this movie. If you have any free time or any expendable income, I would not recommend seeing this movie. If you are a closet murderer, psychopathic freak who loves horror movies, this might be up your alley. I've heard this being compared to The Thing by John Carpenter. Please do not disrespect John Carpenter by even including his name anywhere in any sentence regarding discussion about this film, except for the conversation we're having right now, guys. So do yourself a favor, wait for this movie to come out in streaming or sailing the high pirate seas to see it. So with that, I say I salute you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to MoviePOP. I know you want to watch more awesome movie reviews. Follow up with movie news. You can find us on social media. We've got all the links down below. Make sure to subscribe to this video because I want you to want me. And I want you to like this. And I want to talk with you. So let's do this thing, guys. Again, thank you so much, truly, for watching.